In this episode, we're summarizing the 11th episode from Season 2 of the Wire series titled Bad Dreams. The episode first aired on August 17th, 2003. In the beginning, the Sabatka team gets permission to search the people they are investigating. Lieutenant Cedric Daniels takes Bunk Moreland, Kima Greggs, and Lester Freeman to the Pyramid Industries warehouse, but there is no evidence left there. Greggs finds a bit of cocaine in a drain, and Bunk and Freeman see a bloodstain from Glekis' shooting. Beatty Russell discovers weapons at Eaton Ben Eliezer's house. Fitz and McNulty have a hard time capturing Sergei Malatov at his house. Thomas and Ellis Carver search Nick Sabatka's house and find drugs and money. But Amy is in Nick's room alone because Nick is sleeping at Prissy's place. Officers arrest Michael McArdle, who claims he is innocent. Major Stanislav Valchek and FBI Supervisor Amanda Reese wait for Frank Sabatka, but they don't arrest him at his home because they want to make it a big news event. Back at the office, Daniels and Russell discuss why they let Spiros Vandas remain free. Daniels explains that Vandas is working for someone higher up, and by keeping him out of custody, they might be able to find out who that person is. Bunk and Freeman then show up with news that Glekis is dead, and they've learned that Frank's son Ziggy Sabatka was the one who killed him. This upsets Daniels, so he calls the homicide unit to find out who investigated Glekis' death. Daniels heads off to talk to Landsman, instructing his team to start conducting interviews. Carver, Herc, McNulty, and Fitz return to the office, but Daniels doesn't stop to talk to them. McNulty also mentions that the Madame, Ilona Petrovna, has been arrested. Daniels is really upset because Landsman didn't call him, and he only gathered evidence about the murder. Landsman says sorry for his error, but Daniels is still not happy. Daniels goes on to say that even for a police department as outdated as the Baltimore Police Department, this situation is the worst because their investigation has been seriously messed up now. Sabatka comes to work and talks about Ziggy. Then the FBI enters the union offices with a lot of agents. Sabatka and Thomas Pacuza stay calm when they are arrested, while Valchek acts smug. Reese waits to take them outside until the news reporters show up. Herc and Carver can't even find out Eaton's name. Russell and Greggs only get insults from Ilana. McNulty and Fitz can't get Sergei to give them his name, so they jokingly call him Boris. The FBI questions Sabatka and asks for information to assist him and his union, but Sabatka is upset because they claim to want to help his failing union. Sabatka's lawyers guide him through a detention hearing. Daniels talks with his detectives about the interviews. McNulty says he got useful information from White Mike. Greggs mentions that Nick has not been found yet, and Herc and Carver are searching for him. Daniels asks Fitz for assistance in apprehending Vandas. Fitz explains that now that the union figures are arrested, the federal interest has decreased. Bunk and McNulty end up following Vandas from his house to a meeting in downtown Baltimore. Bunk impresses with his fashion knowledge, identifying Vandas' suit designer. Greggs and Russell tail Vandas into a parking garage, and Russell begins her first foot chase with guidance from Greggs. Despite her nerves, Russell does well and follows Vandas to a hotel, even noting his room number. Bunk and McNulty are impressed with Russell's progress as an investigator. McNulty takes photos of Vandas leaving the hotel with his lawyer and unexpectedly captures a picture of the Greek passing by. When Vandas returns to the garage, he changes cars and loses Greggs, who had been waiting by his initial vehicle. The Greek walks past Greggs as she exits the garage, still unknown to his pursuers. Daniels talks with Perlman about the case. They've identified Vandas' lawyer as Steven Rados and have his address since he rented the hotel room. They suspect Rados might be in charge of the smuggling ring. Daniels wants to know what they can offer White Mike for his cooperation, and Perlman suggests witness protection because the feds are involved. Russell wonders why Sabatka hasn't been offered the same thing and suggests she could talk to him instead. Perlman agrees. Bunk and McNulty wait for Vandas at his home, but he does not show up. Herc and Carver do the same for Nick. Remember, I am summarizing this entire series, as well as other popular works of literature, movies, and TV shows as well. Subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss the next episode or series. If you would like to see the playlist of our summaries, click on the link in the description. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter for additional content. If you find our content valuable, consider supporting us on Patreon if you can. Doing this helps my channel out tremendously. I really thank you for your support. Later on, Nick comes home to find his parents cleaning the house. They won't talk to him at first, but eventually his father, Louis Sabatka, tells him that the police have an arrest warrant for him in the southeastern district. After being released, Frank visits Ziggy in prison, where Ziggy has been beaten by other inmates. He asks Ziggy to explain what happened, and Ziggy says he was tired of always being the butt of the jokes. Frank wonders why Ziggy didn't come to him, and Ziggy says he was too busy with union matters. Ziggy asks if his mother knows he's in prison and admits remorse for shooting the store clerk. Ziggy tells Frank they are not the same, but Frank reassures him that he's a true Sabatka. Ziggy simply tells Frank that he's in trouble and leaves the room. Frank talks with his brother Louis. Louis wishes he had watched over their kids more. Frank believes he couldn't have controlled Ziggy or prevented him from doing what he did. Louis is actually concerned about Nick. Frank tries to calm Louis, saying Nick was only involved in some theft. Louis reveals the search warrant and says Nick was also into drugs. He's angry that Frank didn't intervene when Nick was just involved in small thefts at the docks, instead of serious crimes like drug dealing. Frank explains that the dock thefts were a way to support their lifestyle. Louis insists that it should never excuse what they allowed to happen to their sons, and he leaves Frank alone at the table. Frank goes to work, and the Nat coxswain avoids eye contact with him. Frank borrows Little Big Roy's union card to work on a ship, while Little Big Roy gets paid for sitting in a bar. He tells the shift supervisor, Phil, that he and Little Big Roy are similar because they are both bald and Polish. The other workers find it amusing that Frank wants to work, but Nat begrudgingly acknowledges him with respect. After a tough day unloading ships, Frank meets with his lobbyist Bruce DiBaggio. Bruce informs him that all their political efforts have been undone due to the arrest. Because the FBI is involved, politicians are scared to support Frank's proposals since they've taken money from him. Frank is disheartened, and as Bruce departs, he comments that the issue with their country is that they used to manufacture things, but now they are just taking money from each other. Russell visits Frank at the Union Hall and urges him to become an informant to protect himself. She tells him that he's better than the people he's gotten mixed up with. Frank agrees, and the next day, he asks for leniency for Nick and a safer prison for Ziggy. Perlman agrees to give Frank and Nick straight probation as long as Frank cooperates fully. Frank agrees, but with one condition. He won't betray union members. Perlman asks Frank to return with a lawyer the next day. Freeman asks Frank why he stopped using his cell phone, and Frank explains that he realized it had been marked for surveillance. In another scene, the Greek and Vandas meet for dinner, but Vandas is too anxious to eat. They decide to leave Baltimore because the investigation is getting too close. The Greek asks Vandas to take care of any loose ends. Vandas is hesitant about harming the Sabatkas and suggests they could ensure their loyalty by assisting Ziggy. He proposes convincing the witness to change his statement about Glekas' shooting. The Greek notices that Vandas cares about Nick, especially, and suggests that Vandas should have a son of his own. Vandas talks to a bitter Nick and persuades him that he can help Ziggy. He asks Nick to set up a meeting with Frank. Nick calls Frank at the Union Hall after his meeting at the detail office. Meanwhile, Fitz sends a report of the meeting to FBI headquarters. Nick tells Frank about Vandas' proposal for a meeting. Frank is upset that Nick got involved with drugs and is even more disappointed in himself considering Louis' criticism. He initially decides to talk to the police. However, when Nick mentions Vandas' offer to help Ziggy, Frank rethinks his decision. Despite his anger, he chooses to attend the meeting, prioritizing his son over his ambitions for the docks. He insists that Nick must not accompany him and that he won't deal with the Greeks again. As Frank heads to the meeting, the Greeks get word from an FBI insider, Agent Kotris, that Frank has met with the police and agreed to cooperate as an informant. Facing Frank, the Greek tells Vandas that their plan will not be effective unless they take him out entirely. As we catch up with Omar, we see he meets with Stringer Bell at Butchie's bar. where Butchie's nephew, Haywood, provides protection for Omar, and Perry is Stringer's bodyguard as well. Stringer tells Omar that Brother Muzon was the only one responsible for torturing Brandon to boost his reputation. Stringer offers to give up Muzon if Omar stops pursuing the Barksdale organization. Omar follows Stringer's information, finds Lamar guarding Brother Muzon's hotel room, and observes Lamar's secret knock. To distract Lamar, Omar uses Kimmy, Tasha, and a dog. While Lamar is petting the dog, Omar knocks him out and shoots Brother Muzon in the stomach when he answers the door. Omar explains why he's there, but Muzon denies it. Omar believes Muzon, leaves him in the motel room, and calls for an ambulance as he leaves. That was episode number 24, titled Bad Dreams. To watch the next or previous episode summary, click on the link in the description or at the end of this video. In the description, you will also find additional links for supporting our channel. I will see you on the next episode. Goodbye. We upload new videos every week, so subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to hit the like button as well. Click the notification bell to be notified of when we upload these videos. See you on the next episode of Culture Screen.